For 16 years, Grace woke up before sunrise and slept long after everyone else. She cooked, she cleaned, she washed clothes by hand, and she served her husband's wealthy family like a servant. No matter how hard she worked, they never treated her like family. They mocked her poor background, called her useless, and reminded her every day that she would never be good enough. Then one ordinary afternoon, a phone call changed everything. The moment Grace answered, her face turned pale. Within minutes, luxury cars began arriving at the family mansion. Powerful people stepped out, lawyers, executives, security guards. Suddenly, the same family that insulted Grace for 16 years fell silent in shock, because the woman they thought was worthless had been hiding a secret
No,
so
that's
unbelievable.
impossible.
It was about to change all their lives forever.
No, not him.
Grace never imagined marriage would turn into a life of silent suffering. When she married Daniel at 22 years old, she believed she had found true love. Daniel came from one of the wealthiest families in the region. His father owned several businesses. His mother was respected throughout the community. Their large mansion stood on a hill overlooking the town. To Grace, it felt like a dream. She came from a humble family. Her father had been a carpenter. Her mother sold vegetables in the local market. Although they were poor, they raised Grace with honesty, kindness, and strong values. When Daniel proposed, many people warned her. Some said wealthy families rarely accepted poor daughters-in-law. Others said life inside rich households was never as perfect as it looked from outside. But Grace believed love could overcome anything. She was wrong. The problems began immediately after the wedding. Daniel's mother, Margaret, never liked her. From the first day, Margaret treated Grace as if she were an outsider. Every meal she cooked was criticized. Every decision she made was questioned. Every mistake, no matter how small, became a reason for humiliation. Daniel rarely defended her. At first, he promised things would improve. They just need time, he would say. But months became years, and nothing changed. Soon Grace found herself doing almost every household chore. The mansion had workers, but Margaret constantly dismissed them. Then she expected Grace to take over their responsibilities. Grace cleaned floors, prepared meals, washed clothes, maintained gardens, served guests, and cared for elderly relatives. Meanwhile, Margaret told everyone that Grace was lazy. The insults became part of daily life. Family gatherings were the worst. Relatives laughed at her background, they mocked her parents. Some openly questioned why Daniel had married someone beneath their status. Grace endured everything quietly, not because she was weak, but because she loved her husband, and because she hoped one day things would change. Years passed, then 10 years passed, then 16, still nothing changed. By age 38, Grace felt exhausted. Her dreams had disappeared, her confidence had faded, yet she continued working every morning before sunrise, every night after everyone else slept. One afternoon, Grace stood alone in the kitchen washing dishes after a large family lunch. The rest of the family laughed together in the dining room. As usual, nobody offered to help. Suddenly her phone rang, an unfamiliar international number appeared. Grace almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello," the voice on the other end spoke calmly. "Am I speaking with Grace Williams?" "Yes, my name is Michael Carter. I'm calling from London regarding the estate of Mr. Samuel Carter." Grace frowned. "I think you have the wrong person." "No, ma'am, we have spent several months locating you." Her heart began beating faster. "I don't understand." There was a brief silence, then the man said words that changed everything. "Mr. Samuel Carter was your biological grandfather." Grace froze. "My grandfather?" "Yes, he recently passed away and named you as the sole beneficiary of his estate." The plate slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Grace could barely breathe. "What estate?" the lawyer answered quietly. "Approximately $280 million. Silence, complete silence. Grace thought she had misheard. The lawyer repeated himself. $280 million. Her knees nearly gave way. She had never even seen $1 million. Now someone claimed she had inherited hundreds of millions. The lawyer explained that years earlier, family conflicts had separated Samuel from Grace's mother. After decades of searching, investigators finally located Grace shortly before Samuel's death. The old man had spent years regretting losing contact with his daughter. When he learned she had already passed away, he left everything to Grace. The lawyer requested a video conference immediately. Still trembling, Grace agreed. Meanwhile, the family entered the kitchen after hearing the broken plate. Margaret immediately began shouting. "What have you done now?" Grace looked at her. For the first time in 16 years, she didn't apologize. Daniel noticed her strange expression. "Grace, what's wrong?" she simply whispered. "A lawyer from London called." Margaret rolled her eyes. "What nonsense now?" Grace took a deep breath, then she told them. Nobody believed her, not at first. Margaret laughed loudly. Several relatives joined her. They assumed Grace had fallen victim to a scam. But 3 days later, luxury vehicles arrived outside the mansion, professional security teams stepped out, several international lawyers followed. The entire neighborhood watched in disbelief. The visitors entered the house carrying documents. Within an hour, everything changed. The inheritance was real. Every document was authentic. Every legal verification confirmed the truth. Grace was now one of the wealthiest women in the country. The same family that mocked her for 16 years suddenly became speechless. Margaret's face turned pale. Relatives stared in disbelief. Daniel looked completely shocked. For the first time, nobody knew what to say. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret smiled, a smile Grace hadn't seen in years. "My dear Grace," she said sweetly. Grace immediately understood. The change had nothing to do with love. It was about money. Overnight, everything became different. Margaret began calling her daughter. Relatives suddenly praised her kindness. Family members who ignored her for years started visiting constantly. Everyone wanted something: business, investments, loans, gifts, opportunities. Grace listened quietly. The more people changed, the more clearly she saw their true character. Weeks later, she traveled to London. There she learned the full story. Samuel Carter had built an international shipping empire from nothing. Despite enormous success, he spent decades searching for the daughter he lost. Before his death, he left detailed letters explaining everything. Grace read every page while crying. The letters revealed a loving grandfather who never stopped regretting the mistakes that separated the family. One letter affected her more than all the others. It said, "Money reveals people. Watch carefully when they learn what you have." Those words stayed with her. Back home, the family's behavior became increasingly obvious. Daniel suddenly wanted expensive vacations. Margaret requested large gifts. Relatives proposed countless business ideas. Everyone expected Grace to share her wealth. Yet nobody apologized for 16 years of cruelty. Not one person. One evening, Grace sat alone reading her grandfather's letters. Suddenly she realized something. The inheritance had not changed her. It had exposed everyone else. For 16 years they believed she was poor. And because they believed she had nothing to offer, they treated her badly. Now they believed she was valuable, only because of money. That realization broke her heart. Several months later, Grace made a decision. She gathered the entire family. Everyone arrived expecting announcements about investments or gifts. Instead, Grace stood calmly before them. "Have something important to say." Room became quiet. Grace looked directly at Margaret, then Daniel, then every relative. "For 16 years I served this family." Nobody spoke. "I cooked your meals." Silence. "I cleaned your home." Heads lowered. "I cared for your relatives." Still silence. "You mocked me, humiliated me, ignored me." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "But today I finally understand something." Room remained frozen. "I was never the problem." Nobody could look at her. Grace continued. "Inheritance didn't make me valuable." Her voice became stronger. "It revealed who valued people only when money appeared." Margaret began crying softly. Daniel stared at the floor. Grace then announced her final decision. She would not fund family businesses. She would not provide large personal gifts. Instead, she planned to create educational foundations, hospitals, and scholarship programs throughout the country. The room erupted with disappointment. Some relatives became angry. Others accused her of selfishness. Grace simply smiled. For the first time in 16 years, their opinions no longer controlled her. Months later, Grace moved into her own home. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a peaceful place where she could finally live freely. She established schools for children from poor families, built medical clinics in underserved communities, created scholarship programs for young women pursuing education. Thousands of lives began changing. Meanwhile, many members of Daniel's family drifted away. Without financial benefits, their sudden affection disappeared. Only Daniel remained. For the first time, he sincerely apologized, not once, but repeatedly. He admitted his failures. He admitted his silence. And he admitted he had allowed others to hurt the woman he loved. Forgiveness did not come immediately. Trust takes time to rebuild. But for the first time, Daniel genuinely tried. Years later, Grace became known across the country not because of her wealth, but because of her generosity. People admired her compassion. Students graduated because of her scholarships. Families received healthcare through her foundations. Communities flourished because she chose purpose over revenge. One day, while standing at the opening of a new school, a reporter asked her a question. "If you could go back and change those 16 difficult years, would you?" Grace smiled thoughtfully. Then she answered, "No." Reporter looked surprised. Grace continued, "Because those years taught me the difference between people who love you for who you are and people who love you for what you have." She looked toward hundreds of children entering the school. "And that lesson is worth more than any inheritance." Crowd applauded. But Grace wasn't thinking about the applause. She was thinking about the frightened young woman who had once entered a wealthy family believing love alone would protect her. That woman had suffered, she had cried, she had doubted herself, but she had survived, and in the end the phone call that shocked everyone else was the call that finally set her free.